Now. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another BlabberMouths 101. Today we have Shrehan Lynch. Did I say your name right?
Yes.
All right, that's kind of important. And of course, the great Jorge Rodriguez. And we are talking about self-study. So the purpose of this is a BlabberMouth 101. From the very beginning, please, Shri, act like we know nothing about self-study, which for most of us is going to be accurate, and then take us through how we would implement it from the very beginning, and then how it rolls out during the year, and I guess what our final goal of self-study would be. So before we get to that, please introduce yourself and tell everyone what you're all about, where you came from, a little bit of your story.
Okay, so you can call me Shri. I'm from England. I'm from the south coast of England, a lovely place on the beach called Bournemouth. And I was teaching there for a little while, and then I moved to London, and I taught in a school in London for a little while, and then I moved about 2 years ago to the University of Alabama to do my doctorate in sport pedagogy, which is teaching, how to teach teachers. So at the moment, I teach 4 classes at the university, 3 basic PE classes, activity courses, some universities know them as, and 1 lecture class. The semester before I taught 5 classes, and the semester before that I taught 6. So it's been, I've been teaching 4 semesters here now, so it's been busy, but it's been wonderful and I really enjoy it. And I'm learning a lot.
Nice. So how much did you teach in England before you came over here? Did you go right from graduating to the university level, or how many years did you put in school in England?
So I did a year in special ed. I did a year in elementary, a private school. Didn't quite have the patience for that, actually. And then I did a year of training in high school, and then a year actually in a high school in London.
Why didn't you have the patience? What age level were you at?
So it was mainly grade 3, but I taught games all throughout. And I was like, I don't want to teach sharing. I just want to teach my sports. And I soon realized that it wasn't much different when you got to the high school, but you could just have a very different relationship with the students, in which I enjoyed that a lot more. And I miss teaching high school students a lot. Although some days I don't think my job now is any different.
Yeah, you did mention that a little bit. All right, so you came over here, you started teaching at the university level. How did that go?
It was certainly a shock to start with. I wasn't used to being called ma'am, and I kept saying to the students, please just call me Shri or Miss Lynch, whatever you feel comfortable with, but ma'am was really unusual for me. I was kind of overwhelmed when I first got here because I had no idea about the university system. I had no idea that students took general education classes for the first 2 years, like maths and English and all those other things. And so when I was teaching like PE majors, I was so confused that they were taking all these other classes as well, and that we didn't just have them for PE for 4 years. So it was a change, and I found it really odd that nobody was coming to observe me. So every school that I've worked in, people would come and observe me all the time, and I'd be constantly getting feedback about my teaching, which I really liked. And nobody observed me my first semester, and I said to Dr. Richards, I said, this is bizarre. I could be teaching these kids anything, and nobody would know about it. And he was like, well, maybe I'll come and watch you, and you will be observed. And I have been observed since our manager has come out and observed. So yeah.
All right, so did you struggle at the university level? Where did this awareness of the self-study come in, and why do you want to be observed so much? Aren't you happy? I'm always happy when administration does not come into my classroom. I'm driven enough. I'm good. Why do you want that feedback?
I think because I've just always had it, I've always been observed. In the last year when I was in London, we would go and observe each other just as good practice, professional practice. I had a really good colleague, Issy Dickinson, and I would just go and sit in for an hour and eat my lunch and watch her lesson and see how she was teaching dance. And, you know, it wasn't my specialist area, but she was amazing at it. And then she would come in and watch me. And we were always, you know, it was kind of an open door policy. We could go and watch anybody. And I found it really different when I got here, that I'd be like, oh, can I come and watch you? And people would be like, well, why? Why do you want to come and watch me? And I'm one of those people who thinks, you know, the day that I don't want to learn more as a teacher, then I probably shouldn't be in teaching, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We should be constantly learning.
All across life, absolutely. And it's funny, when I was in your session, your whole table laughed at me when I said in general education, they put a pineapple outside of their door. Regular ed teachers will literally put a pineapple, it's not like a real pineapple, but a picture or whatever of a pineapple outside the door, and that tells other educators in their building, hey, come in, I got a really cool lesson, come check it out. So if you walk by and you see a pineapple, you know, hey, go in there, pop your head in, there's probably something cool going on. And when I said that, the whole table just kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about, a pineapple outside the door? But it is really good practice to have other people who have no affiliation other than, you know, working together, whatever, look in your room and say, hey, this is what I saw, give you some feedback and get better. Because, I mean, that should be a goal, is to always get better. Or, hey, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just thinking it's interesting because it's true. I mean, it's kind of like what you said. If the administration is leaving you alone, if people aren't coming in and observing and you know, really seeing what you're doing, that usually means you're doing a good job and they don't have to worry about you. And it should be the opposite. It should be the opposite effect, where people should be coming into your teaching space to see how you're doing your classroom management, to see how you're teaching certain cool lessons. And it shouldn't just be the best lessons, but there should be some constructive feedback going on in a constant basis. But people, I think, I don't know if it's a culture or what it is, but I think the people typically think if people are observing them, then it's usually for a bad thing.
Well, sorry, Justin. I was just going to say, a part of me likes the pineapple thing, and then a part of me also doesn't like it, because actually you're saying, I'm teaching something really good today, come and watch me. Whereas my question is, why aren't you teaching something really good every day? And you should be able to come and observe any one of my lessons, and I should be able to tell you, this is what I'm doing, the students are doing this, and if I can't do that, and if I'm not always open to somebody coming to watch me, then I probably shouldn't be doing it. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, sometimes you have your home run lessons, like maybe the beginning you're doing one way and then you're culminating to something. So some of them are a little more, I want to say, better to look at, but sometimes you're at a different place in a lesson than other times. And it's kind of funny because I think when we talk about the difference between feedback and evaluation, so I love feedback. I hate evaluations. I hate somebody coming in and telling me, blah, 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 this is you're a 3.43. That's your worth, right? Versus you did this well, you did this well. Did you think about this? You missed this in the corner. Check out what that kid's doing. So, again, feedback I'm always all about. Yes, give me feedback all the time. Evaluations, now it's kind of like attacking who you are as a person versus how do you get better as a teacher. I think that's where the distinction lies, a little bit for me at least. All right, so now you're observed. We're all good. You're struggling a little bit. Is that what I understand with the culture coming from England to Alabama? That should have been a little bit of a culture shock. I mean, I'm in the same country, and I think if I went to Alabama, it would be a bit of a culture shock for me. What was that like?
It was a culture shock to start with. I linked this back to this guy called Oberg. back in the 1960s, came up with this framework called the acculturation process. And he says that you go through these stages when you go to a different country. And the first stage is the honeymoon stage. And I was like, yes, fried food. My mom never let me have this. This is amazing. Sweet tea, didn't really get along with that. The weather, nearly died. It was so hot. Everything was new. I was, going to football games and experiencing everything. That was wonderful. I thought it was great that, all these students were coming to my classes and that they'd chosen my class, and I thought it was all really special. And then you go through this stage of culture shock. Wow, I gained 10 pounds. That was probably a killer for me. And I don't like sweet tea. And then you nitpick. You nitpick at everything that goes wrong. Oh, I'm a terrible teacher. What am I doing wrong? And then you go through this stage where you're slowly accepting what you're going through. And I'm still in that stage now, I think. Maybe becoming a little bit more bicultural. Some days I think I'm more American than I'm English. But here I say that, and I'm drinking English tea. And I sound still quite British. And I'm wearing all my clothes that I still had in England, so I'm probably not that bicultural, am I?
Nice. So where did the need for self-study come from? Did you go looking for self-study, or did you come across it in a conversation? Where did the idea of self-study come from? And then we could delve a little more into what is it and what it looks like.
Yeah, so I was writing a journal just from when I first got off the plane, just about everything, about my whole experience. And suddenly my journal changed to teaching. So when I started teaching the classes, I found out what classes I was going to teach. And I was writing in my journal about the syllabuses, and I was thinking, this is so odd. I'm writing a syllabus that I have to submit, and I don't even know what my students are like, or what assessments are going to work for them, or anything about these students. I've written this whole syllabus to suit these students that I know nothing about. I don't know what it's like teaching here. So I'm writing all this stuff in my journal, and then I meet Dr. Richards, who is an awesome professor, by the way, at our university. And I told him that I was writing this journal, and he said, have you thought about self-study? And he explained it to me. It's action research. You're documenting how you're changing, and through writing this journal, how is your teaching changing, and what else can we draw from to show how your teaching's changing. So I was kind of, it's a mix between something called an autoethnography, which is just writing about yourself, basically. In a narrative kind of way. And I had done an autoethnography for my undergraduate dissertation. And then when he explained what self-study was to me, it all made sense that I wasn't just writing about my experience, I was writing with the hope to make change in my practice as a teacher.
Yeah, and that's always the big point. What are you doing with this information? I mean, no matter where it is, if you're going to a conference, how is this going to change your teaching, no matter what we do? So you were journaling no matter what, even before this. You were just doing it for yourself. You found that beneficial?
Yeah. It's a fairly isolating experience. I get off the plane, and one of my absolute best friends here, Jenna Stark, collects me from the airport. And suddenly hit me. I was like, what am I doing? I just got off the plane. I hadn't really, and honestly, I'll admit this to anyone, I didn't hugely research the program. The school that I was working at had a lot of behavioral issues. It was a really tough time teaching there, which is why I chose that school. And all I knew when I left was I wanted to make a difference. And I wanted to make more of an impact than just being in one school. And so I get off the plane and I'm like, wow, what am I going to do to kind of, let out what I'm thinking and feeling? And one of my very good friends that I did an undergraduate with, she gave me this journal. And so, I mean, I'm not big on journaling really. And now I do it on the computer because it's much easier and quicker.
Yeah, I mean, Jorge and I, we reflect all the time. We just don't journal. I talk into my phone. I think that's a lot of where we get our reflection. Jorge?
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask real quick. So from going from the honeymoon phase into like the culture shock phase, did you find that journaling actually kind of helped you through, or is helping you through that culture shock phase? Before you actually started journaling, sort of with a purpose, when you were just kind of writing down, your thoughts for the day, or kind of reflecting on what was going on that week, did you find that kind of helped you through the process of that culture shock part?
In some respects now, I think I look back at my old journal entries and I think they're quite immature, and they're not, they're more, sometimes they're a personal rant rather than, and I wrote something the other day saying how helpful it was to express how I'm thinking and feeling. And even if it is a rant, and I did have a bad lesson, actually I'm rationalizing my thoughts and I'm thinking critically about what I'm teaching. However, that wasn't the only thing that I did. So I was journaling, and then after, as part of just my teaching practice, and after the first week, I was getting exit slips from my students. I was doing mid-semester and end of semester surveys. Once a month, I would have critical friend discussions, which just means a chat with Dr. Richards, and he would ask me questions like, how's it going? And try and make my self-study focused. I had questions that I was answering each day. How is my teaching changing and evolving? So it wasn't just my journal. It was, I would have this mid-semester feedback. I would look at the feedback from my students, and then I'd comment on that in my journal as well.
Yeah, I feel like, like Justin said, we've been using Voxer for a while now. There's constant reflection going on. I definitely feel like it's made me better at planning, better at thinking, better at just kind of getting comfortable with myself. But recently, probably for the last month and a half now, maybe 5 weeks, I got it's called a self journal, and it has all these different parts to it that make you kind of plan out your day and kind of reflect on certain aspects of your day. And then at the end, kind of show appreciation for what happened on that day. And I found that has really helped me kind of organize my thoughts for the day. So rather than just it, like you said, being a rant or just talking about what is going on that day, it really helps me kind of focus on what happened that day, how I can change that, and then actually showing some appreciation for what happened on that day, not just the negatives but also the positives.
I just read some of the comments there about time. It is time consuming. I found that at the start of the semester, because I had organized my syllabuses in terms of teaching and day-by-day stuff, everything was kind of in order. And I hate that because I'm a bit of a critical theorist now and I don't really like order, but it did take a lot of time. Quite often it would be like 2 a.m. in the morning. I'd be writing this journal and looking at exit slips and how to change my lesson for the next day. But the students recognized that, and come the end of semester surveys that I sent out, they were writing things like, oh, you asked us what you wanted to change. We wanted Thursdays to have such and such. You did that. And so they recognized that I was listening to them in the process. And that was really beneficial, because then I started looking at other research and how I could listen to them more. And I think that we don't listen to our students enough in teaching. They're the consumers. They're paying an absolute fortune for this education, and it's my absolute responsibility to ensure that I'm providing some kind of good service, or let's call it a facilitation in my class.
Yeah, I mean, voice and choice, and it comes down to power. In my eyes, those with power don't need to ask those without what they think and how to get better. unless you as a teacher want to get better. I've told this to many administrators. Where's your surveys to your teachers? Asking them, how am I doing? How's my communication? How's this? How's that? How's the other thing? And a couple of them I've ran across said they put out the survey, and when they get the results, if they score under, it's 1 to 10, if they score under an 8, they'll send out a survey every like 3 weeks or every 4 weeks until they get back up to an 8 in that area they were weak at. So some administrators really get it, and other administrators never. No feedback, have no idea what the staff thinks, and maybe if they knew, they wouldn't care anyway. I mean, you talked about getting the information, actually doing something with it, which is really one of the keys that I learned from your session.
Well, the most important thing is I'm not asking for numerics here. I'm asking, open-ended questions. What have you learned in my class? What would you like me to continue to do? What would you like me to stop doing? What would you like me to change? What else can I do to help in this course? And don't get me wrong, some of my tennis students have put things like, not have the class at 9 a.m. and things like, oh, get a ball machine to throw the balls at me. And I'm like, guys, you selected this class. Like, I haven't got the money for a ball machine. I'm sorry. I have to make you buy your own tennis rackets and balls. Do you think I've got the money to buy a what's it called? Ball machine? No. So some of it is annoying. Don't get me wrong, but some of the real meat has definitely changed my practice. I did have a comment from my lecture class this semester, and it said, and I think it's because I've taught the class before, but I've changed so much stuff. I've changed the whole syllabus, but the topics are the same. And I have said, last semester I did this with this class, and one student, and there's 40 students in that class, one student put, stop comparing us and talking about last year's class. And I was like, wow, actually, I probably do that. And so now I made it a comment in the class, and I said to them, I'm really sorry if, that I did that. And you're all individuals within my class, and I'm not comparing you, and everybody learns differently. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. And it's anonymous. I don't know who said it. So yeah, it's been really, really good, I think.
So do you have a recommendation of how you kind of filter out some of those comments that might not necessarily be obtainable or necessarily even pertain to your class? Because I mean, Justin and I are both in elementary schools, and there is definitely something to be said about the wisdom of crowds. But in an elementary school, you also have to take into account, kind of their age and their maturity levels and their cognitive abilities. So how would you kind of recommend, kind of filtering out some of those things that
you mean when they want to skydive, when you ask them what activity do you want to do and they write down skydiving?
You know what? Yeah, I actually got that in one of my conversations with the group, and I said, what would you like to do in PE? And honest to God, I got skydiving
numerous times.
Dodgeball is always up there, and all kinds of stuff. And it's like we cannot jump out in PE.
But that's the whole point. It's your mindset. How could you facilitate some kind of? I'm not telling you to skydive in your gymnasium, by the way, but I'm saying, like, how can you acknowledge that and talk about it in your lesson so that student still feels that you've acknowledged their response? How else can you, I'm just thinking about it now, skydiving. Do you have trampolines? I don't think they have them in US schools, but I might do something on a trampoline. I might create something. I might bring it into a lesson on outdoor adventurous activities and say, ideally, I'd love to take you all skydiving, but unfortunately, you have to be 18 or 21 to do that. And so this is what we're going to do instead.
Virtual reality. Maybe that's when you bring in a virtual reality headset and have them skydive.
Perfect.
Put them on scooters.
That'd be cool.
All right, so let's take a quick step back. if I am a teacher and I am watching this or listening to this, but I'm like, all right, cool, self-study sounds cool. Where do I begin? What do I need to set up before the school year to come in and say, all right, I am ready to implement self-study? And the reason I'm asking that is because I want to know for next year.
Okay, so first of all, you have to pick out something that you want to look at in your teaching. So it might be, how are you using assessment methods? What are my learning objectives? Am I going to use different types of instructional models? How many different types of instructional models? Am I implementing models-based practice? You know, it could be anything within your teaching that you can just pick on and funnel down. So try and make it specific. Try not to look at the big picture. So maybe that one on models-based practice might be a bit bigger. But Ash Casey can definitely help you on that. Is the expert. So pick something quite small and maybe start journaling. If you're in an elementary school, if you're really teaching the younger years, I might do some kind of surveys with smiley faces and unhappy faces, something like that. And then I would ask people to come and watch you in your school. I would maybe journal. I would ask colleagues to come and watch you. And something else I would also do is I would video myself. I know a lot of elementary teachers here, especially you, Justin, you're on your own. So there isn't another PE teacher to come in and watch you, but you could put a camera up in your gym and I could watch you, or one of the people in this chat could watch you. I know Steve Harvey has loads of time on his hands. So maybe he might jump in there. And if not, just watch yourself. My goodness, the first time I watched myself teach, I was mortified. I was like, do I sound like that? People must think I'm so condescending. But I think it's because my tone just goes up and down all the time to try and, you know, keep levels of enthusiasm in my class. So what else would I do? This semester I've started doing video narratives with my students. So they'll go home and they'll get on their phone or whatever, and they'll just talk to me about what they've learned in the class, and then I'll watch those before we have the next lesson. And I would talk to somebody. I would pick somebody in the field or just within education or just anybody and say, look, this is what I'm trying to improve. This is how I'm doing it, and try and get them to keep you on track. So it might be that you are looking at your assessment, but then suddenly you start talking about soccer and like how they're scoring or something like that. And there'll be that person who can kind of funnel you back and say, hold on, what's that got to do about assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've definitely done the video thing, take a video, because like you said, I'm the only one, and I put it out there privately to people and gotten feedback. And one of the main things for my video was Adam Laveau telling me, why do you have static stretching in the beginning of your lesson? Like, it gives me time to set up. I mean, I don't know. He goes, you know the research. I go, yeah, I don't know. It never translated over. So if he didn't tell me that, my kids today would still be stretching right after they got done their instant activity. And because of that's absolutely huge. So you're saying focus on one small area instead of just how do I improve pedagogy? That's too much. You're going to look at assessment, instruction, time delivered of you talking, whatever it is, and pick one small thing. Get somebody who's going to give you the feedback. Now, do you recommend journaling or somehow putting your thoughts down somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, we all do it in different ways. So I journal, you blog, you can tweet. That's a great way. I think we have to use the technology around us, and I would consider myself relatively young, but technology's just gone boom, especially over here. You have such a group of people who are devoted to professional practice that you can reach on at any time of day, and they can give you help within your field. So let's say somebody just said questioning. Well, what about questioning? What do you want to improve on your questioning? Are you questioning at the end of your class? And so you could put out on Twitter, like, how are you questioning within your class? Are you using it throughout? Are you just using it in TGFU? Are you using it if you're teaching personalized system of instruction? Or should you be using it if you're using that model? So yeah, lots of things. I definitely do some kind of reflection though, where each day you're going back and then you could look at it a year later. Wow, last year I didn't really ask many questions in my class. This year I am.
So one thing that I really like about the self-journal that I've been using is that same kind of thing. It takes a big concept and you have to kind of break it down into smaller concepts. And this is actually something that I read about also in the happiness hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt. He was talking about how Benjamin Franklin actually had a system to become more virtuous, and he would set up like a chart every time, and he had like 5, 6, 7 different things that he was focusing on for that week, and every time he did that thing, he would put a little check mark. And so the self journal kind of does the same thing. So you break down a bigger goal into 5 different chunks. And then every time throughout the week you achieve that goal, you put a little check mark. So for instance, questioning. So every time at the end of class you actively question your students, you could put a little check mark on there. And so that not only gives you a sense of success and a feeling that you're actually doing it, but then it creates a habit. So I like that. I like the idea of taking a big concept, breaking it down, and then giving yourself little check marks of success.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And telling your students what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Even elementary students, they'll pick up on it. And when I use this in a methods course teaching our pre-service teachers, they were intrigued on what I was doing. They were like, wait, you're doing this self-study thing. Like, you're already a teacher. Why are you trying to become a better teacher? And I had to explain that process. Well, yeah, although I'm qualified, and yes, I'm a teacher, it doesn't just stop. The learning doesn't just stop. But part of me, it's really important not to keep that journal a secret, because part of self-study is being open to criticism. And if you're not open to criticism, then maybe don't do this, because I can tell you I have cried at some of the feedback when I've looked at it, and you have to be prepared for some honest and harsh thoughts, but only then will you get better.
And one of the main things in the session that I sat in after I heard the riveting research in the first 25 minutes and then everything else was publishing your results. And that is huge. I was at the session with all professors, so they were talking about publishing it in a journal. We're talking about Twitter, blogs, YouTube channels, podcasts, things that people actually listen and read. But either way, the fact of you getting it out there and letting people know, here's my journey, here's what's going on, here are the roadblocks. This may be a roadblock that you hit. Maybe I could help you before you hit that. All that is absolutely huge, from learning from other people's mistakes and I guess victories as well. What did you do with the publishing aspect?
Bit slow, to be honest, at the moment. It's on my never-ending list to do, to put everything into a paper and to publish it. Part of the reason why I do think publishing is important is even as a PE teacher, because otherwise how are other educators going to know what you're thinking and what you're going through as a PE teacher in the field, who we need to learn about the most as teacher educators? So let's say you did this next year and you did want to publish it, I would get in contact with somebody in higher education to say, look, I've done this all on myself. I want the research community to learn about what I've had to change in my teaching as an elementary school teacher, so that you can better prepare your pre-service teachers. They might face this in the field. They might go through this stuff.
I think it would, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, there was a lady in our session who was from China and another guy from Turkey, and they would have, I think, benefited from reading about your journey as well. Or if they had done the journey before you, you would have benefited from reading about their journey.
Exactly, but there hasn't been any journeys found specifically of doctoral students in a PEEP program yet. I have presented at ASEC that Dr. Richards did it for me because I was actually in England at the time. So some doc students heard about it then. But it's an unusual experience to come to a different country and to change your teaching, whereas actually it would be really valuable over here if you made more public what you're trying to work on specifically. And it might help other teachers who potentially do just roll out the ball and think, oh, maybe I need to improve my teaching.
Yeah, so what I was just going to say also is that I think, well, because we do a podcast and you know, we do it regularly once a week, I think that would be an amazing podcast series to have somebody kind of check in, you know, maybe once a month, maybe it's I don't know, every 6 weeks or something, but have somebody like yourself check in and say, this is where I am at my journey. These are some of the challenges I'm facing. These are some of the successes I've had. I think that would kind of go a long way for people to be able to hear that journey and from the person who's actually doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And if anybody who's listening to the chat ever wants to reach out to me, I wouldn't proclaim myself any expert in teaching, but I will certainly try and help, and I would certainly try and reach out to others if I couldn't help you on any specific stuff on teaching, or how to do this sort of self-study on your own teaching, or about coming up with some questions to look at in your teaching.
So another question I had with the self-study, is this something that you would recommend your students kind of going through as well? Because I know, you know, in the beginning of the year, we always kind of do a goal-setting activity for the year with my students. But this would be kind of a different approach to it. Would this be something that you would recommend the students kind of get into as well?
So the thing with self-study is it's about changing practice. So as a teacher, you're changing your practice as a teacher. So it would depend on what you're asking. By asking your students to do it, you're telling them you need to change something. So it would depend on, it might just be a learning journey you might ask your students to do, but it would be quite presumptuous to assume that everybody in your class needs to change something. Like, I don't believe, as a teacher personally, I have the right to tell my students to change something about themselves and, you know, consider their practices, unless potentially I'm teaching something like TPSR.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, but I feel like in the same way, you know, if the students can identify something that they may be able to improve, not necessarily change, but they could reflect on that and then take steps to improve maybe their listening skills, maybe they're working with others, maybe you know, something about their experience as a student that they can take ownership with. So it's not necessarily only based on how the teacher is teaching, but something that they can do for themselves to improve their experience in physical education.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, something you could maybe do at the start of the class is just some kind of, especially an elementary circle time, and you can say, this semester I'm looking at this within my teaching. Is there anything you want to do? You could get them to do a behavior change workbook. And it might be that they're okay with all of their behaviors that they're expressing right now. But if they want to improve something, they have that choice.
All right. Do you have, here it is. Dean has a question. He says, what would you tell a group of teachers who have years of experience yet tend to rely solely on that experience over constant learning and reflecting?
Oof, well, that's certainly a tricky question. What would I tell a group of teachers who have years of experience?
But then they use that experience and say, well, this is what happened in the past, so this is what I'm going to do now over, learning and reflecting.
Well, I don't think that telling somebody what to do is probably a good idea, but I might, and if this is somebody in your school, I'm half guessing that. I'm guessing that this is, colleagues or somebody in your department. I might demonstrate what I'm doing and try and inform them about it, or maybe leave some leaflets in my staff room or in my PE department. But I do think definitely demonstrating what you're doing and informing them about what you're doing, rather than telling somebody that they're doing something wrong, or that the experiences that they've been doing, which are working for them, is incorrect. Because I think it's like, I teach smoking to my undergraduates. The more I tell them not to smoke, the more they're probably going to go out there and smoke, right? It's about informing them of all the other things around smoking, which gives them, they become more well-informed individuals.
Yeah, and I think with this self-study, it has to be intrinsic. I mean, you just have to want to get better. And if that's not one of your primary goals of waking up and saying, hey, I'm good, or I'm whatever, I could always get better. How can I do that? I don't know if we're going to convince people to do that, because this is a lot of work. It's a lot of introspection. It's opening yourself up to getting blasted by students, by peers, by others. It's difficult. So I could imagine that a lot wouldn't want to do it, but your select few who really feel that teaching is a calling and want to better themselves, I think this would be an easy sell. I think it's either I'm all in or I don't want anything to do with it. I don't think there's any gray in the middle. Well, maybe it's, I don't know. That's just how it comes across to me.
And many teachers are just doing it anyway. I still speak to the people that I used to teach with, and even just on the phone, and they'll be like, oh, I taught a really rubbish lesson today. This is what went wrong. Tomorrow I need to do this. So, if you're an effective and a good practitioner, you're probably doing it anyway. These are just a little bit more structured ways in which you can really reflect on the process and make concrete plans for change within your practice.
Yeah, and I said being intentional. I mean, it was funny because I was in the session, no idea in the beginning what was going on, and then the more I heard, hey, I do that, I do that, I do this. And I'm not as intentional with everything. I think that's, like you said, the big difference. All right, Jorge, any closing thoughts you have, sir?
No, I mean, I think it's fantastic. I completely agree. I think everybody should definitely reflect on their practice and make an effort to get intentionally better at what they're doing, at least not only for their own, gratification and their own, satisfaction of their profession, but also for the kids that we teach. So very important.
Sure. Any last thoughts? Anything you want to tell anyone out there?
No, good luck. Continue teaching amazing lessons and doing what you're doing. And if you want to reach out to me on anything to do with self-study or anything in general, please do.
And how would they reach out to you?
You can get me on Twitter at Miss Lynch PE. And I can also share my email address with you, and you can share it with everyone.
All right. And one more thing before we left. one of your feedbacks, you said, wasn't it something about being sexist? Did I hear that correctly in one of your feedbacks, or did I mishear that?
In one of my feedbacks.
Was it about gender differences? Something you were talking about at the table, and I was like, that's really interesting. Or maybe you just use that as an example in there.
I might have used it as an example, but I can have a look at my feedback. I feel like that might be something I would have remembered.
Yeah, you would think. That's why I asked you about it. No worries. All right, well, thank you very much for giving us your time, everyone out there. Dean, Doc out there, killing it. CJ, I forget what your name was again, and, of course, the great Jorge Rodriguez. Unfortunately, we would have hung out with him at Shape. That darn weather killed us, but he would have been paddle slamming right along with the rest of us. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.